Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men is not only one of the best dystopian films of the century, but is more relevant every single year, tackling themes of illegal immigration, pandemics, and government control over citizens.
Hello, movie friends. Welcome back to Raiders of the Lost podcast, the ultimate film and TV podcast. Today is a very special episode because we are discussing one of our favorite films of all time, Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men. This is a terrific film. I remember seeing it as a teenager. I think we were 16 or 17 when we saw it. And Children of Men, like a couple other movies of that era, including There Will Be Blood, were films that really inspired me to grow a love for film and want to become a filmmaker. And we made a movie when we were 20, and I basically used the cinematography of Alfonso Cuarón and Emmanuel Lubezki, the cinematographer, and used that for our movie. So our movie was all handheld, long takes, very minimalist production in cinematography. And Cuarón is a master director. To this day, he has solidified himself as one of the greatest directors of all time. And Children of Men is one of his magnum opuses. And I just think that this film deserves to be seen by everyone and is still incredibly culturally and societally relevant to this day.
It's a timeless movie. It gets better every year, more relevant every year. I hadn't seen it in a few years probably, but I've probably seen it 15 times. But it came out in 2006, so obviously it just blew our minds and our hair back when we were teenagers seeing Children of Men. And Alfonso had just come off Y Tu Mama Tambien as well as Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, so very much in-demand director, was able to get a $75 million budget for this film, only pulled $70 million globally at the box office, but it has definitely recuperated its funds and made a profit off of VOD sales, and now just being a cult classic of this century so far. And Alfonso is a really special filmmaker, and I think people finally realize that after this movie for sure, because, you know, plenty of directors jump in for franchise films and do that stuff, and not a ton of people saw Y Tu Mama Tambien, which I think is a terrific movie. But you can see so many of his skills that he was crafting and style of his approaching of directing in Y Tu Mama Tambien in this film, which we'll talk about, especially the long takes, handheld, foreground and background, telling a story two different ways. Commercially and critically, like I said, commercially it wasn't super successful at the box office, but it has made its money back plenty. Rotten Tomatoes, it is a 92% critic score, 85% audience score. IMDb is a 7.9 out of 10 with 511,000 ratings, which I think is pretty low.
Pretty low.
This for me is a 9.5 personally. This movie, maybe a 10. It's an almost near perfect movie.
It's not even in the top 250 on IMDb.
It's not. Didn't make that list. You got to be like a minimum 8.2, 8.3 for that. It was nominated for 3 Oscars, including Best Adapted Screenplay for Alfonso, Timothy Sexton, his writing partner, David Arata, Mark Fargara, and Hank Osterley, as well as nomination for Best Cinematography for Emmanuel Lubezki, as well as film editing for Alfonso Cuarón and Alex Rodriguez. Alfonso is very involved with the editing of all of his films. And the screenplay is just tremendous. It's based off the book of the same name, published in 1992 by P.D. James. In the screenplay, so it was first written by Paul Chart. He wrote the first version. It was rewritten a few times by other screenwriters, including Mark Fergus, Hawk Ostby, Timothy J. Sexton, and then Alfonso Cuarón. The final version was written by David Arata, Cuarón, and Sexton. Clive Owen's insights greatly impressed Cuarón, and he contributed a great deal of uncredited work to the final script. And Alfonso chose not to read the original novel by P.D. James because he feared it would compromise his vision for the project, because there are quite a few differences between the screenplay and the book.
Have you read the book?
I've never read the book, no.
I did. After I saw the film, I read the book, and it's really fantastic. But the biggest difference is, without a doubt, the reason for infertility. So in the movie, they chose that women became infertile and are no longer giving birth or even having pregnancies. But in the book, it's men who become infertile and they're no longer producing sperm. And so that's the reason why babies have stopped being born in the book. And the book is a terrific science fiction dystopian novel. The movie is pretty much faithful for the most part, and they did a wonderful job adapting it with the writing. And then Alfonso just, sometimes a director can make a story soar from the page in ways that you never believed or imagined. And this is an example of such an incredible adaptation of a very difficult and complex novel to pull off.
In a quick synopsis of the film, in case you've never seen it, or a little refresher, so the film takes place in the year 2027 in a chaotic world in which women have somehow become infertile, as Anthony just said, and a former activist, Theo, played by Clive Owen, agrees to help transport a miraculously pregnant woman to a sanctuary at sea. And another major difference between the movie and the book is Theo and Julian's son Dylan died from a disease during the epidemic, because there's also a flu epidemic pandemic that strikes the world in 2008 in this world.
Sound familiar?
I know, that's why it's still relevant, and they predicted quite a few things. Now, in the book, it's Julian who is pregnant, and Theo is protecting her. In the book, Theo is married to somebody else and divorced them and had a daughter named Natalie who was killed when Theo backed out of the driveway and accidentally ran her over. The movie and the book show this death as the reason for either relationship not working. And the movie also changed and combined Julian and Helena while creating Key. So Key was created for the story, because I think Alfonso, when he was first approached for doing this movie, he wasn't super enticed by the novel. He wasn't, what he said, was interested in basically a dystopian future telling the story of upper class wealth, because a lot of the book follows that kind of characters. But then he kind of spitballed and came up with the idea of just the cataclysmic event of infertility and what the world would look like, and telling a story like that with a lot of the same characters.
And high concept movies are difficult to pull off, and high concept basically means something very extreme causing the story. So like maybe Blade Runner is kind of high concept, but just something like world changing. And this is an example of, babies are not being born, but like something like maybe waters run out in the world. So these are something like Mad Max. That's like also a high concept premise for the world of a film. And they are very difficult to pull off, because I think most of the time they kind of miss the mark. And science fiction, if it's not that great, it can be pretty bad. But the thing is, Alfonso is such a incredibly meticulous, detailed, and artistic visionary that he managed to pull this off in resounding ways to make it still feel like it's so realistic, and it's such a high concept, crazy premise, but the way he crafted this movie makes it seem like this is totally plausible. And if something like this did happen, I mean, this seems like an outcome that would be likely. And I love science fiction films in the future where we get to see like these incredible new kinds of futures, whether it be the production design, technology, the advancements of things like AI and everything about society. But then I also love this kind of sci-fi where we see basically a very more realistic interpretation of our world, much more closely akin to ours. And this world feels like ours in so many ways. And it's set in 2029, and this film came out in 2006. So it was set more than 20 years after when the film came out. And yet it felt like such a true depiction of a possible future of our world. And obviously, the main theme of the film, I would say, is hope. And the entire society, for the most part, has completely lost hope. And the world that Cuarón and his production team built is a reflection of that. The world has stopped advancing. The world has stopped building things. The world has stopped searching or exploring or improving things. And instead, the world is just falling apart, withering away, aging, and falling into crisis and violence and rage and control, because there is no hope for a future. And I think Theo is a great representation of a lack of hope. He's a person who goes on this journey and eventually finds hope at the end of the film. But there's a great dialogue scene between him and his cousin, Virgil, where Nigel. He's
the guy who runs the Arc of Arts.
Yeah, and Theo tells him, like, why are you doing all this? Like, what's the point? Like, I don't understand how you can keep going. And Nigel just says, I just don't think about it. Because Theo has lost himself into the idea that, in 100 years, there won't be a single person to look at any of this. So what's the point in doing anything other than just surviving as long as you can? And then also there's a bunch of remarks where Theo, Julian says, you're smoking again? He said, yeah, but it's not working. He's basically saying they haven't killed me yet. So Theo is a representation of a complete loss of hope.
And to counter the cigarette thing, there's still hope for some people, like some members of the Fishes. Theo offers one of them a cigarette later in the film at that hideout. He's like, no, those will kill you, because that guy still has hope, because the Fishes still do have hope. Now, there are three major events and things that have happened in this world of Children of Men that has sent the world into complete chaos and a loss of hope. Obviously, the 18 years of infertility. A woman has not given birth in 18 years to a baby. And this is brilliantly shown with this awesome opening scene of the death of baby Diego, who's still called baby Diego. And he's a 17-year-old how many days old kid, biggest celebrity on the planet because he's the youngest person. He's killed while he's being mobbed by fans and spits on a fan. And now there's another youngest person named, but I think that opening shot's so brilliant because it just shows the audience of all these people watching the loss of hope, because this is the youngest person alive, the most famous person alive. Now they're dead. More hope has been drained from the world. So 18 years of infertility. Then we also have...
Remind me, I want to go back to the cafe scene real quick after you finish your thing.
And so we'll get to that. Then we have another main event that's happened in this world is the collapse of every civilization besides Britain. This is shown brilliantly through a news broadcast that says, kind of almost comically and satirically, the fall of United States, Paris, Brazil, Russia, Moscow, every country listed off as fallen and destroyed.
But Britain remains.
Fallen to chaos. Britain is the one outlier, and they still have control over their country.
I think that seems very likely impossible because it's an island.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, England was historically difficult for other countries and nations to conquer throughout the ages because of its territory being an island. So I think that this is definitely a likely possibility.
Took ancient Rome quite a bit to get
took them
Britain.
a while.
Took them a lot of failed conquests. And also, besides the collapse of the world, besides Britain, we have the 2008 flu pandemic that wiped out a massive amount of the world population, as well as many of the young children and babies that were born before the infertility happened. Obviously, Dylan, the son of Julian and Theo, passed away at the age of 2 from this flu pandemic.
And we get a lot of great just exposition, not through dialogue, but through things like footage on the news or graffiti in the background or newspaper headlines. And Alfonso and Lubezki, they work very closely. You can compare to Villeneuve and Deakins. Villeneuve and Deakins, they start in pre-production, and that's kind of rare for a DP to be working with the director that early on. But Lubezki and Cuarón have such a intrinsic working relationship that they start in pre-production designing the film, the look of the film. And they both were adamant about portraying the world building in a way of showcasing ideas and themes and issues through graffiti, through the news, through newspapers. And they even they were together, they hit the idea of loading up the background with information, Cuarón says, with graffiti, with play cards, and with newscasts, thus limiting the kind of expository dialogue that often plagues dystopian stories. You know, movies where a character will just go on exposition runs for 5 minutes, and I oftentimes find that pretty boring and unnecessary. Cuarón is someone who doesn't like to hold your hand with his movie. He says, "We cannot allow one single frame of this film to go without a comment on the state of things." And this is a movie where when you watch it over and over again, it has high rewatchability because there's so much in every frame, whether it's graffiti in the background or a sign or something about the news or a building, and also the design of the world. There's so much detail put into every frame, but also Lubezki and Cuarón, they took this documentarian style approach to the cinematography where it's very abnormal for this in a film like this, where the camera will just wander on its own and then explore different parts of a scene. For example, when Theo is on his journey to work and he passes by the immigration cages, the camera stops following Theo, and then Lubezki and Cuarón just take the camera and they pan it to the left and then looks up at the building. The camera will often observe the world around us. Sometimes the camera tilts up to look at trees. This is something that is so rare, but it adds to this documentarian feel where it's like, it feels like we're seeing footage of a story that was captured in real life. And there's a real power to not always following the characters And only like something like this can really pull it off in a resounding way that works and is powerful and helps serve the story. So if you watch this movie, the camera will often do its own thing and show you different aspects to scenes that don't always involve the character. And I think that plays so much. But also in terms of blocking and actually the casting of the film, Clive Owen, he's a tall guy, 6'2", so he stands out in a crowd. But the opening scene in the cafe is a perfect example of Cuarón trying to show you that this character is important, because we don't even know he's the lead character until we start following him. Because the film opens, cafe, he walks in, orders a coffee, and then we follow him outside. That's when we know he's the lead character ultimately. But right off the bat, Cuarón shows us that Clive Owen as Theo is the most important person in the scene, because everyone they cast in that scene, all of the extras, they purposely cast shorter people so that Clive Owen really stood out in the scene. And so if you look at the frame, he looks like a giant compared to everybody else in the frame, and it really makes the audience lock with him to single him out in a way as a lead character.
Plus, he barely even cares what's going on in the news. He walks right in to get his coffee. He looks up at it, but he's the only one that already has no hope, so he's not transfixed, and obviously the explosion outside. And I want to stay on the blocking cinematography, and this is one of the most detailed films you'll ever see in your entire life. Every single frame, every shot, every scene, every location, the amount of meticulous detail everywhere is so incredible. And I think it flies under the radar for a lot of people, because every shot, everything you see is put there on purpose, coordinated, planned out very intensely. And like you said, so much exposition in the background, but also what Cuarón loves to do with his storytelling, and you see this a lot in Y Tu Mamá También, is playing with the foreground and the background at the same time of a shot. Not necessarily, like you said, sometimes the camera will be following the main characters, then it'll turn to, like you said, the refugees inside that prison cell, then comes back, or to the mother holding the dying son, then cut back to show you what's going on in the world, because the background is just as important, if not more important, than what's going on in the foreground in this film when we're watching our characters. There's so many shots where our characters are up front in frame, but in the background you can see things happening. And Y Tu Mamá También, they do a brilliant job. That movie's basically a road trip for the majority of it, but Alfonso's telling you the story about the state of the society, the wealth disparity, racism, everything going on at the time in Mexico, with the background of the scenes with people in their towns and villages, with even the story of the mural of the crashed victim on the highway, all kinds of things that are going on in the background that he's not addressing as a storyteller with his characters, but you're seeing it. He wants you to see it visually. And pretty much every single shot in this movie, the background, there is a ton of information, not just exposition like Anthony said, but also things that are important to the story, to the world, to help you understand what's going on, to really give you a state of what this world is like. And I just love to watch this because there's so much detail, and it's so transfixing, and I see new things every single time I watch this movie. But I can't stress enough that how many times this movie demands a rewatch. It's one of the most rewatchable movies of all time.
Yeah, and like you said, the blocking is really exceptional in cinematography, and I think that people maybe don't realize how much work and care and precision goes into something like this because of the handheld nature of the cinematography. Kind of makes it feel like, oh, they're just filming that right there. But everything is very much by design. He is a very controlled director, and Lubezki is one of the best cinematographers of all time. He actually won the Oscar 3 years in a row, which has never been done before, which is absolutely absurd. It was Birdman, The Revenant, and something else. I can't remember. Oh, Gravity.
Gravity.
3 years in a row. That doesn't happen ever. And the thing is, because of the handheld nature, it takes away the idea that it's very controlled, like a Fincher film or like a Kubrick film, but I guarantee you it is just as controlled. And there are so many elements. What I find so incredible about the film is, more than anything, the blocking and cinematography. Because this film is obviously famous for its long takes. And now long takes have become a pretty common thing, a commonality, because of films like this, and because of films like because of Steven Spielberg. He does a ton of one-ers. Paul Thomas Anderson, Robert Altman, the early days of oneers, and even going back to Touch of Evil with Orson Welles, who crafted one of the best one takes. Although
Plus French New Wave.
Yeah, the French New Wave. French New Wave, not just long takes, but just documentarian style of handheld cinematography. Godard really inspired that new wave of just shooting scenes, not doing a ton of lighting, not doing a ton of camera setups, but just capturing it with one frame and just going handheld like we're just there in the room with them. But there's a film called A Long Day's Journey to Night. It's a Chinese film. A Long Day's Journey to Night came out in 2018. It has the greatest oneer in history. If you haven't seen it, check it out. It's 57 minutes and it's real. And that's an instance of it's a real one take. Whereas in Children of Men, all of the one takes are actually several takes blended together. None of them are actually true one takes, but that doesn't make them any less impressive because of the intense choreography, set design, and action sequences. I mean, there's a scene that one of the one takes has tanks and gunfire, and it's basically a war zone. So I think that the resources just aren't at your disposal to really pull that off in one take. Although I'm sure Cuarón tried, but many of these takes are blended together. The car scene is a take where it's one take. It's about 3 or 4 that are blended together. But that doesn't mean it's any less impressive than something like A Long Day's Journey to Night, which is a real oneer. Now, it's not just the camera running for 4 or 5 minutes that's impressive. It's the blocking of these scenes, the precision of every movement of every actor, of every extra, of the location, wherever they are, of the physical obstacles in the way of these characters, and the camera moving with them, the dance of it all. That's what I find so mesmerizing about this film and so powerful about it. And very few films even compare to it. And also, especially one of my favorites is the farmhouse escape, where Theo saves Key and Miriam by...
It's a couple of minutes that no one talks about, yeah.
Exactly. So it's actually 3 minutes and 40 seconds, I think. So they're in the house, they walk outside, he takes the carburetor out of one engine, then he takes the other car and they push it down the hill. Then the guys go after them, and Theo manages to start the car with Miriam as they're pushing it down the hill, and then they drive away. First of all, it's extremely suspenseful. It feels like there's a ticking clock, and there's so much going on. You're outside, the camera's outside of the car, then it's inside the car, then it's outside the car again. And you're dealing with a dangerous set piece in terms of an actual vehicle. You know what I mean?
That shot starts indoors.
Exactly. But what I find even more impressive is the timing of it. Because think about what's the lighting like. They shot it at dawn, like real dawn. The sky the scene starts out. It's quite dark, and then by the time they're pushing the car on the road and driving away, it lightens up a lot. So they shot it at real dawn. And the sky is actually changing. So not only was it perfectly choreographed and blocked, but they timed it perfectly for the kind of light that Cuarón wanted for the scene. And that's just like an amount of care and detail that you rarely ever see before. But it makes all the difference in the world, because it's not like it's color corrected to look like it's dawn. It's like they actually shot it at dawn, and it makes all the difference in the world.
Clive Owen did not have shoes on.
No shoes.
I have a little info on the 3 obviously most popular long takes from this movie, or fake long takes, hand-to-hand with CGI, to explain how they pulled them off. And obviously the most famous one is probably that car attack, which was the incredible 360 moving rig that they came up with that car. Now this is the long shot when the Fiat Multipla is attacked by the terrorists with all of the passengers inside. It demanded a camera rig that could rotate within the car. They used a rig developed by Doggy Cam Systems and controlled by a stunt driver. So there's a stunt driver controlling this entire rig in the car at the same time. The windshield was designed to tilt out of the way to allow camera movement in and out through the windshield. The single shot was used in 6 takes over 4 locations, requiring a lot of transition work from the visual effects house Double Negative as it pans around inside the car. The cocktail, stunt driver, and motorcycle, from the moment it hits the car, windshield, blood, and roof were all computer rendered with 3D animation.
That's incredible invisible stuff. CGI. That Molotov cocktail, it's all CGI.
Yeah,
completely.
The gunshot, the glass. But you can assume that Julianne Moore probably had some sort of blood bag that just splashed all over herself when the camera moved away from her after the gunshot.
This movie has a lot of invisible CGI that interacts with the actors.
Another really great long take.
I'm sorry, but also inside that vehicle, the actors' seats all moved.
Yeah.
So as the camera would move inside the vehicle to get to different setups, the actors would actually be moving in their seats. So the interior of the car was quite large, and then the seats would mechanically get out of the way of the camera or move forward or left or right, so the camera would have room to weave throughout the interior of the car.
The next really impressive fake long take in this film is Key's birth. And this is after Key and Theo have made it into that Bexhill refugee camp that they technically smuggled themselves into with the help of Sid and Jasper. Now, the birth of Key's baby was achieved by putting Claire Hope Ashity, who was the actress who played Key, into a set piece which had a fake lower body. A prop baby was pushed out of it for Clive Owen to hold. The prop baby was later digitally erased and replaced with a full-moving CGI baby. Other effects such as breath vapor were also added digitally. This is a really incredible long take, though, that I think flies on the radar as well in this movie.
Because it's intimate, and it's one of those takes where it's just one room and they're not moving.
No, it starts before.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You're right. They enter the room and stuff.
Yeah.
But he manages to do a lot of setups with the camera, making it feel like it's being edited. You know what I mean?
And something I love about that scene is obviously Theo is an alcoholic, but he's using his drug of choice and his addiction to clean his hands,
purification,
to kind of purify his hope and how he's got his hope back.
Yeah,
in a lot
he
of
actually
ways.
has alcohol in his hand in every scene in the first 20 minutes,
and he never finishes a cigarette in this movie. In the final and obviously most maybe impressive long take is the war zone street battle at the end of the film in the third act, where Theo has to take cover in a battered building and cause for concern for which. Take cover in a battered building. This caused concern for the studio as it took 14 days to prepare for this long one shot with a delay of 5 hours every time it had to be reshot. So 14 days it took to prepare and then 5 hours to reset and redress everything after they did an attempt at a shot. It was shot over the course of 2 days, but only one complete take was actually captured on film. In the middle of one take, some blood spattered on the camera lens, which just happens inside the bus, I believe. Mm-hmm. Writer and director Alfonso Cuarón early ended this take by shouting "cut."
Nearly
Ended this take by shouting "cut." But his voice was obliterated by the sound of a tank and gunfire. Looking at the footage, cinematographer Emmanuel Lubezki persuaded Cuarón to leave it in, and that is the shot that appears in the final movie.
Yeah, so you see about a dozen drops of blood on the lens, and that's real. They didn't add that, but throughout the course of the scene, they brilliantly erase drop by drop. And what happens is when the camera passes by, usually an image of darkness, or if it pans to something, during a pan of motion and action is when they start digitally erasing drops until finally there are no drops left on the frame. But if you watch it carefully, you can actually see every moment where they digitally take away each drop of blood. They'll do it right here, then they do it on the next pan, and they do it when they bring the camera and tilt it up. They'll get rid of a couple drops of blood until when they enter the building, all of the blood is gone off the lens.
That's pretty cool. And in addition to having great production crew for these long takes, you need incredible performers and actors. This is, without a doubt, Clive Owen's best performance and best role in his entire career. He is exceptional and just perfectly cast as Theo. Chiwetel Ejiofor is excellent as Luke as well. Brings so much to that character.
Both an inside man in the same year.
That's a good point. That's right. He's a detective. Julianne Moore plays Julie in this film. Michael Caine, what a scene stealer in this movie as Jasper. And Charlie Hunnam actually has an early role in this movie too. He's the blonde guy with the dreadlocks who works for the Fishes. And I think that's just one of the most important parts when you're working with great talents. That really makes life a lot easier for a director when you're doing long takes like this.
And Claire Hope Ashley as Key, like you mentioned earlier, is fantastic in that role. And she's actually from London, but she does a terrific accent in this. But she has like the London slang, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Which I think adds a lot of character to her personality. And also Michael Caine used John Lennon as inspiration for his character's personality, so you can definitely see the vibe, the John Lennon-esque vibe and quality to him. And Michael, there's so much that isn't explained, but more so shown. So Jasper's wife, Janice, she's in a catatonic state. She's basically incapable of speaking, and it's because she was tortured by the government. They were both political activists, and Jasper was a political cartoonist. And you can see some of his political cartoons and drawings on the walls of their home. And Janice was a photojournalist and very heavy in activism, and that's why they befriended Theo and Julian, who were also activists as well. But Janice's story is tragic and also connects to the idea of big pharma and the use of quietus, which is a drug, a legal drug in Britain, which is basically a drug that kills you. It's for self-suicide. And it's something that you can relate to big pharma, to something like the overuse of antidepressants or any kind of big pharma drugs that they're just pushing on the public. And Jasper makes a joke that, ganja is illegal, but this stuff is legal. It's kind of ridiculous. And I think that the ties to huge pharmaceutical companies is a great correlation that is still very, very relevant to this world. But quietus seems like something that, big pharma and the government would legalize one day in a certain situation like this.
Yeah, that's one of the major themes of the film is big pharma, and I think that even ties to they're talking about the rations that people get every month, and the rations come with suicide kits, and antidepressants. That's what comes in ration kits along with the food and everything and supplies. But some other huge thematic elements of this film: illegal immigration and illegal immigrants. In this film, Great Britain is the last civilization, really, and illegal immigrants are hunted. It is illegal to help or shelter. It is advised to report against illegal immigrants to get them locked up. And they basically conceal themselves as illegal immigrants in that refugee camp in order to get to the boat at the end of the film. Some other interesting themes: we have a slight improvement in technology here and there, like the newspapers are digital. Some little
surveillance
technological things here and there, like Nigel's son is playing that hand, like VR game, AR game.
Spot on.
We also have youth and medical surgery. A lot of like the advertisements you'll see on TV or billboards are about, staying young forever, because there's no hope. You might as well try to stay young as young as you can forever. And you can assume that maybe Nigel's son has had some sort of surgeries as well. He's got some scarring on his face. Who knows what he's been through, as well as the wealth disparity seems at its worst in the history of civilization in this movie, because when Theo goes to visit his cousin Nigel, he goes into the wealthiest part of Britain. In this place, it's like a different world. He goes into it's walled off and secured by a ton of military enforcement, behind fences, behind walls. And in this world, it is just the wealthiest people just living their lives as the elites of society. It's like a different planet, basically. It's so clean and pristine.
Yeah.
And compared to the rest of the world, which is so dirty and destroyed and decaying. We also have a great theme about chance versus faith, which is something that Jasper talks about when Theo brings Key and Miriam there to hide out. He's talking about chance and faith, and how by chance Theo and Julian met, and by chance their son Dylan was born. And depending on who had faith or not was where they ended up after the loss of Dylan and everything like that. But I love that debate of chance versus faith. Now you could say that for the rest of civilization. Maternity is also obviously a major theme in this film, with Key being the first mother in 18 years to a newborn baby. Futility, hopelessness, pointlessness. What is the point of life anymore? As well as infertility, obviously one of the main themes of this film. And something that Jasper says a few times in this movie is Shanti, 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 which Miriam and Jasper both say. Miriam says it over Julian's dead body. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Jasper says it at the house. And what this is a reference to, he says it when he finds out Key is pregnant. And it also appears at the very end of the credits. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. It's the final line of T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, a poem that deals with the theme of infertility in the post-World War I world. Originally from the Upanishads, it roughly translates to the peace that passes understanding.
Also, divinity is actually the main theme of the book, the novel. It's kind of implied that divine reasons are the cause for infertility, although the film discredits that. But it still implies that. What I love is Cuarón never explains what caused it.
Yeah.
He just implies different ideas and possibilities, whether it be the destruction of the environment, whether it be something like God's wrath. But also there's that stork joke that Jasper says where everyone's trying to figure out why no women aren't giving birth anymore, and they ask the gentleman eating in the corner, and he's about to take a bite of this big, delicious wing, and he says, "I haven't the faintest idea, but this stork really is delicious." And storks obviously being like the children's story of like where babies come from. So that's a metaphor for humanity destroying itself and eating itself, consuming itself in a way. But he played with themes of divinity and Christianity in this film. Obviously, Key makes that joke about being a virgin, a pregnant virgin. Obviously, it's a joke. She says she just doesn't even know the name of the father. And then also, she tells Theo in a barn, in a stable, and that's what's the story? The nativity story. So very much just like that. He's sprinkling themes and images rather than telling you this is why it's happening. He's making the audience come up with their own assertions based upon what they're seeing on screen. And one of my favorite sequences is the arc of art, Nigel's place where he is basically a preserver of humanity's greatest artworks. And we obviously see the statue of David, the real statue of David, in his residence, as well as a Pablo Picasso painting.
And a couple Banksys.
Yeah, a couple Banksys. So actually that's very interesting as well. But if you look at, so the thing is, the statue of David actually has a broken leg. David's statue is still fully intact. However, there was an article that Cuarón read. Someone in Italy, an Italian journalist, wrote an article about how Italy is losing its heritage and its art. And in a picture drawn for that article in the magazine, showcased a broken leg on the statue of David as a correlation for what the article was about. And so he took that idea, liked it a lot. So he's like, okay, let's have that as this David statue. Have the broken leg like in that article I read. And the painting by Pablo Picasso is actually called Guernica, and it's the same image drawn on the wall of the tunnel as well. This was Pablo Picasso's reaction to General Francisco Franco's bombing of Guernica, Spain, the Basque capital, during the Spanish Civil War, which killed an estimated 1,600 civilians. So it's a very relevant painting to the themes of the movie. And now Banksy has actually two artworks featured in this film. In the film, we see the stenciled image of a child looking down on a shop. Now, Cuarón actually tried to get Banksy to work on the film with him because he actually hired a lot of well-known graffiti artists to create the graffiti you see in the film. However, Banksy ended up declining the film, but he did give them permission to use two of his artworks. But he did have a meeting with Banksy, or so he thought. So what happened? This really cool story happened. So Alfonso Cuarón reached out to Banksy's manager, and famously, Banksy's manager is the only person who knows in the art world who knows Banksy's identity and maintains that secret to great effect. And so Cuarón said they came close to having the artistic collaboration of the infamous anonymous street artist Banksy. Banksy was not yet the famous Banksy that he is now, and I dug him, Cuarón says. He also wanted to have the graffiti artist work on the film in some way, so he tracked down Banksy's manager and arranged a meeting at a coffee shop. However, Cuarón sat across from the manager, who started grilling the director on his political ideological stances. Banksy was nowhere to be seen and never showed up. And then the meeting with the manager ended without resolution. However, Cuarón hanged out at the cafe a little bit longer, and he spoke to another person who was sitting nearby who seemed to be very excited. This person told Cuarón that while Cuarón was meeting with the manager, a silent figure walked into the cafe and sat right behind Cuarón at another table, the whole time hidden from view. Then, before Cuarón left, this person left the cafe. Cuarón suspects that Banksy was this person who secretly listened to their meeting. Ultimately, Banksy did not sign on to the film, but like I said, he gave permission to use two pieces for the film.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Back to religion and Christianity, specifically, and the symbolism all over this movie, a few more references. So Julian is the leader of the fishes. And now a fish is a symbol of Christianity since the 2nd century AD.
That's right, yeah.
And obviously that's a reference to there. But also, when Key reveals her pregnancy to Theo in the barn, in the stable, like you said, she is taking the position of Botticelli's painting of the Venus.
Yeah, we saw it in Italy, in Florence. Yeah.
Also, another reference is you're talking about the David statue, and Nigel, like Theo says something to him, and Nigel makes a joke saying, we couldn't get Michelangelo's
Very tough. Yeah,
Pieta.
Pieta.
Michelangelo's Pieta. It was already destroyed. Now the Michelangelo's Pieta statue is a very famous statue in Italy, made by Michelangelo, obviously. And
Is this the one with the crying mother?
Let me say
I'm just asking you. Jeez, man.
It is a statue of Mary holding a dead Jesus in her arms, and she's weeping basically, and Jesus' body is lifeless. And this is actually depicted in the film later on when Theo and Key are in the refugee camp, I believe, and the camera, like you said, sometimes goes to what's happening in the background. The camera turns to a woman who's holding her dead son in her arms, weeping. So what Cuarón does in this film a lot is he brings art to life and brings it to the ground, to reality.
And I also really love the sound design of this film. It's very resonant and impactful and disturbing in a lot of ways. And one of my favorite things of sound design is the credits are actually, you hear the sound and laughter of children. And it's something that's referenced by Miriam in The Abandoned School. She said it was she says something like the sound of children playing, like that disappearing.
Something about the loss of hope.
Yeah, something like that. And we get that great shot of Key sitting on the swing through the lens of the open area of the broken window. But the sound design is really propulsive, especially the action sequences, and also the ringing of Theo's ears we experience in the film multiple times from the opening scene. There's also, when he walks into his office, it's extremely low ambiance sound because he's having trouble hearing, so we're kind of having trouble hearing with him as well.
And Julian even says that thing about that's the last time you'll ever hear that frequency, probably a metaphor for like the loss of hope in the world.
Mm-hmm. So many metaphors. And also going back to how you said the flu epidemic killed a lot of people. If you look in Theo's office, it's an open floor plan with several dozen desks with computers. However, half of the computers and desks are covered with plastic bagging, meaning that half of the staff is gone. Also, there's a jobs crisis. Very few people can work, and there's just no new people. There's no new blood to inject any life into an economy or any life into any industry. So that's another reason why jobs are in such low effect, and it's very difficult for people just to survive, because you got to think about, new generations of people create new wealth. They create new economy, new industries, or they add to the economy in some way. They create small businesses. They work in the STEM careers and advanced technology. They advance sciences. They invest. They create upstarts. They create everything. They help build and improve society, and that's gone. So there's nothing about society is growing. Instead, it's only decaying and it's only withering away.
I want to talk about some imagery, and then we'll take our intermission. Then we got to start talking about the characters in the movie.
Damn.
So there's great imagery in this film and great references. I think a fan favorite of this movie is the floating pigs outside the window of the Ark of Arts, which is a reference to Pink Floyd's album Animals, which was heavily influenced in a satirical representation, you could say, of Animal Farm by George Orwell. And then also, there's a great shot on the countryside of burnt cows.
Multiple times.
Their hooves just up, and it makes you wonder, like, what does that mean? Did they have some sort of disease that plagued the cows? Or is money so scarce in this world that it's pointless to even have cows because no one can afford meat? And you can't even, maybe the farmers can't even afford to keep the cows. Maybe they had to kill them, but it's probably more of a disease is going through agriculture and cattle.
There's also another George Orwell reference to 1984 in which we see that there's a Ministry of Energy. And now in 1984, the government is run by different ministries, the Ministry of Truth, the Ministry of Energy. There's all sorts of different ministries which all have different aspects of controlling the population. And so it's tying to that with this film as well.
Also, going back to Pablo Picasso's Guernica, which is the giant mural that's behind Theo when he's sitting at the dinner table with Nigel and Nigel's son, it's really interesting to choose that specific one because of what it means, and it has a lot of wartime themes to it, but also it's black and white and gray. And of all of Picasso's works, he's got so many colorful works, or any kind of mural. You could pick a colorful mural. Obviously, they chose this because it's behind Theo, our main character, and it's kind of just a representation of the world, because the depiction of England and Britain and London in this movie is constantly overcast. It's dreary, it's rainy, it's gray. The stone everywhere is decaying, it's falling apart. And this mural, this painting, basically represents the world, even though we're indoors right now behind Theo.
That's a really excellent point, because there is no sunlight in this movie to be seen at all. Not for in one frame. There is no sun at all. That's a great point.
Thanks, man.
Man, you know movies.
I wrote that down when I was watching it. I said, painting behind Theo is dark.
Anthony is an idiot.
And then any other imagery I want to bring up real quick.
Well, there's more we can get into, but let's head into our intermission.
Oh, yeah, we'll hit our intermission, because there's a ton to still talk about, because this is Children of Men, and it's a masterpiece, and it's an incredible movie, and oh, man, I wish people would see if they've never seen it before.
I mean, I looked on Letterboxd. It only has 35,000 reviews.
That's sad.
Terrifier 2 has more reviews than it.
Sad.
I mean...
The thing with this movie, and the thing with, obviously, the film community right now, is recency bias is so important to films and how well they're received, that if this movie came out this year, people would hail it as the best movie of all time.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to name the person, but influencer on TikTok, they mentioned how the new Chris Hemsworth Extraction movie is gonna. It has a long action take, a oneer, that and they only refer to Daredevil as having another great action one take. It's like, have you seen Children of Men? Have you seen The Raid?
Yeah, The Raid's awesome.
Oh my God, the recency, man.
Anyways, this isn't about.
I'm sorry. I'm ranting.
This isn't about recency bias. Maybe we should do an episode on recency bias.
We should. I think that's a really cool topic.
The problem with recency bias.
That'd
be a great episode. But let's get into our intermission. And before we continue, the best way to support Raiders of the Lost podcast, to help us do the show full time, is to become a patron at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast. You can also leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. That really helps the show. It helps us get seen by new people. Apple Podcasts, you get the option to even leave a written review as well, plus subscribe on YouTube. But Patreon is the best way to financially support us. We have 5 different tiers: $2, $5, $10, $25, and $100 tier. Patrons, everyone has access to bonus episodes every week. The weekly chat is exclusively on Patreon now, but every patron has access to it, as well as a weekly bonus episode. That $10 tier gets you access to our Discord. It's an incredible film community. We just watched Blade for a watch party the other night. It was super fun.
Motherfuckers always trying to ice skate uphill.
So we do watch parties on there a couple times a month. $25 tier gets you a custom episode. You pick a topic, we do it for you. Our $100 tier, that is the chosen one patronage. After 3 months in that tier, you get to come on the show for a fun guest segment. We have a personal watch party with you only, as well as so many other perks that all these tiers have that I don't even have time to list off. So go to patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost podcast, the very best way to support our show.
The sponsor of this show is, of course, our friends at movieposters.com, the #1 place to get your posters online today. Be sure to head on over to their website and use our promo code Raiders10 to get 10% off your order today. They are also doing a movie poster giveaway on our Zodiac episode. So all you have to do to enter this free giveaway is to make a comment on our Zodiac episode on YouTube. That will enter you for a chance to win a free poster from movieposter.com. We are going to select a winner on Thursday, so be sure to find out if you won, and if not, be sure to use movieposters.com and our promo code Raiders10 for all of your poster needs.
All right, let's get into this intermission, Anthony.
Let's do it.
Movie quote competition up first. Ready?
Ready.
One day, the AIs are going to look back on us the same way we look at fossil skeletons on the plains of Africa. An upright ape living in dust with crude language and tools, all set for extinction.
God damn it, I know this. This is a movie I've seen a lot of time. Oh my God. Say it again.
One day, the AIs are going to look back on us the same way we look at fossil skeletons on the plains of Africa. An upright ape living in dust with crude language and tools, all set for extinction.
Oh, man. I can't think of it. I don't know.
Ex Machina. Nathan says that.
Nathan, yep. I'm a bonehead.
Bono. Anthony is a bono, everyone.
Extra double.
Whatever that means.
No, man. It
Making
means
up
something.
words.
It means something.
He's starting a new slang word, bono.
No,
everybody.
I'm using your excuse. I went for a run before this.
He's a little winded.
I did.
What'd
I'm
you
not
do?
winded. I'm just exhausted.
Couple blocks.
Around the yard. Twice around the yard. Here's my quote. I love rumors. Facts can be so misleading, where rumors, true or false, are often revealing.
So this is Hans Landa in Inglourious Bastards.
Well done.
Oh, yeah.
Well done.
Playing at midnight every night. At
We're going
New Beverly.
tomorrow.
Well, yeah, it should be fun. Guess this movie released here, Anthony. Swingers.
1996.
You're so money, you don't even know how money you are, baby. You're correct. 1996, Swingers came out.
You're some money, baby. The Big Lebowski.
1996.
98.
Ah!
You fooled yourself.
All right, movie pop quiz time. Anthony and listeners, which Alfred Hitchcock film remake did Julianne Moore star in?
I know this. Psycho, directed by Gus Van Sant,
Yes, sir.
and Vince Vaughn played Anthony Perkins. I mean, not Anthony Perkins. What's his fucking name?
Norman Bates.
I said the actor's name by accident.
He's basically, that's all people refer to him as anyways.
yeah. All right, here's my quiz. Who directed V for Vendetta? Another fantastic dystopian tyrannical film.
Crap, who the hell did direct this? I always, because it's not directed by the Wachowskis, they produced it.
Correct.
That's why it has a very Matrix style. It is directed by...
This might have been too hard.
I don't think this is correct. Francis Lawrence.
John McTeague.
John McTeague.
He worked on, he did Ninja Assassin for the Wachowskis, and then their TV show. What's their TV show?
Sense8.
Sense8. Yeah, he did a lot of Sense8. But yeah, Ninja Assassin was a huge bomb, so I don't think he got another chance to make a film.
We are going to be doing V for Vendetta on the 5th of November this year.
Remember.
To watch that.
I love
episode.
that movie.
Hell yeah. Do we have any
Oh, haters.
haters,
One sec.
unsubscribes?
We got a couple. Sorry, I didn't screenshot them together in a row. One second. Bear with me. Okay. Jay Kelly commented on one of our TikTok clips about the Fast and Furious party, talking about the cars. So Jay Kelly wrote, "That's not the Charger from the original. I don't believe it. That one had a chrome grille, larger supercharger, bug catcher, and more period correct wheels. So I wonder if that's even the real car or a screen car used, or maybe even one of the camera cars." Also unsubscribed. So yeah, he has I looked it up, and it doesn't look like the actual car from Fast and Furious 1. We had a real hater. He said something really terrible to us.
Happens pretty often.
Yeah. So in our clip for Guardians 3, where you made a great clip talking about the what's the High Evolutionary being
A great villain.
with no empathy. This guy, I blocked him because he said a couple other nasty things to us. This guy wrote, "Straight white men in celebrating not having to have empathy, shocker."
Okay.
So I just I was like, Jesus.
So straight white men don't have empathy?
That's what he said, yeah.
I didn't write the movie.
Yeah.
Listen, I just don't care about the backstory of every villain. It's better.
No, you're an evil person, Jim.
The Joker is amazing because you don't know what his past is.
I don't want to
It's a
hear it. I don't
mystery.
want to hear it, straight white man.
Hey, if they need to keep justifying villains killing a billion people, whatever, dude.
Yeah. I thought it was a terrible.
I guess you feel good about Thanos
Yeah.
killing trillions of beings.
Yeah, and I did reply to him. I said, "What are you implying here? That we're evil people who don't have empathy?" And he said, "That's exactly what I'm implying."
Whoa, man.
And so I just blocked him after that.
That's quite the reach.
Yeah, it was a terrible thing to say.
I care about things.
I know.
Goodness. Well, I have a great 5-star review
Let's hear it.
to
A nice rebound.
clear the tension. This is from Adamantium Princess. Love the name. Do you have adamantium in your skeleton too? If you're a fan of movies and cinema, Raiders of the Lost podcast is a must-listen for you. Hosted by two of the most passionate film enthusiasts I have ever known, this podcast dives deep into all things movies, television, and more. They bring a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the table, discussing everything from the history and cultural significance of film to their favorite scenes and behind-the-scenes stories. Their love for movies is infectious, and it's easy to get caught up in the excitement as they explore movies in such great detail. One thing I appreciate about this podcast is the level of research and analysis that goes into each episode. They don't just scratch the surface of a film, they deliver incredible amounts of facts about filmmaking as a whole. Also, their commitment to their fan base goes above and beyond. Overall, Raiders of the Lost podcast is a fantastic show for everyone who loves movies and great storytelling. They are the most engaging and knowledgeable hosts and are such a blast to listen to, making them the perfect podcast for you. Wow, what an incredible review.
That's great.
Wow, the word count is so high.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
That's an amazing review.
Adamantium Princess, thank you so much. We appreciate you tuning into our show, and we hope you're enjoying this episode of Children of Men if you're tuning in, because it has all the things that you love about our show in it.
So much research today. We did a ton of research. I spent all morning.
All right. Do you have...
Recommendation?
Yeah, what do you got?
I recommend watching The Best of Youth, which came out in 2003. It's a 6-hour Italian film, but it's really great. It's about two brothers who walk very different paths in life, centering upon some of the major impactful moments of Italy's history in the 2000s and late 90s. I'm sorry, the 60s to 80s. And so a lot of the big political or societal elements and standout historical events of Italy during that time. And they both were on opposite sides. One became a cop and one became an activist, and they actually are on opposite sides of a protest and a riot at one point. Very different political ideologies, but their bond is still so very powerful. But also, it's a great story and incredible characters and very detailed. It feels like I watched the lives of two people unfolding, and also there's a bunch of other characters involved in the story, but I couldn't recommend it enough. The Best of Youth.
My streaming recommendation for this episode is On the Count of Three. This is on HBO Max. It was directed by Gerard Carmichael. It is a very dark buddy comedy that I highly recommend, and it's just a really good time if you like those nihilistic, intense comedies. It's just a good time. So, On the Count of Three on HBO Max.
That just came out, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A lot of people recommended that to me last year.
I don't think it's been on HBO Max for a while, but yeah, it's there now.
Mm-hmm. It's good though.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Lives up to the.
You would like it a lot.
All right, I
recommend it.
Yeah, I get a bunch of people DM me that movie last year. I remember.
Yeah,
because it came out last fall or something.
I believe it was 2020
or 2022.
2021.
2021. Okay.
Yeah.
Now getting back into Children of Men, most specifically, its production design, as well as Cuarón's preference not to use dialogue as exposition for the audience, but instead showing you the world visually to give you a sense for what's going on. There are actually a ton of newspaper headlines visible on screen throughout the course of the film, which inform the audience what is happening in this world and what has happened. So I have a list of these headlines. If you'd like to give me a second to read these off.
Well,
Okay.
it'd probably take you a minute to read them off, Anthony, not a second.
Okay, wise ass. I'm gonna take my time now, nice and slow. All right,
I got nowhere to be.
Here are the newspaper headlines you see throughout the course of the film. Raid nabs refugees' weapons cache. Africa devastated by nuclear fallout. U.S. troops full attack. Extremist explosion, a right royal ripoff. Charles should be thrown out. Throne, throne. Also, this movie has Charles as the King of England. Elizabeth has passed away in this film, so that's also something they got correct in terms of Charles taking over. Militias occupy Cincinnati. Bozeman and Spokane. Chaos in refugee camps. Fertility drug kills. Surgeon arrested. Hormone attacks. Violent reaction. 100 suicides. Nation in denial. Russia in crisis. Massive migration. Police put mosques under surveillance. Gatherings are forbidden. Bombing of Saudi pipeline disrupts world's oil supply. That's pretty crazy. Refugees blamed for increase in terror attacks. Coast towns turned into refugee camps. PM denies torture of British citizens. Allegations of abuse dismissed as a sham. Dirty bomb detonated in Munich. England bans all immigration completely. 25% infertility rate. This is dated as 2008, so a few years before full 100% infertility rate. 2 years since last baby born. No baby hope, admit scientists. War and famine lead to mass migration. Janice Palmer questions British ethical response to the refugee situation. Janice was Jasper's wife. Massive migration. Channel tunnel closed. All foreigners now illegal. Refugees mass on Europe. And MI5 involvement in torture of photojournalists, implying Janice.
Yeah, and they actually predicted a lot of things that happened in the last several years and decades. The global pandemic, obviously, of 2020, that's something that happened, and they predicted, well, not saying that it was going to happen, but, it happened. And that was in 2008 in this world. Anti-immigration movements seem to have been getting stronger the last several years. Subtle advancements in technology, for sure. I think, like, the digital screens is something that they definitely got correctly. Surveillance, for sure. Also, the 2012 London Olympics. So there's a sequence where Theo is wearing a 2012 London Olympic Games shirt. And filming took place in 2005 for this film. And then a few months before they started filming, London won the bid to have the 2012 Olympic Games there. So it's not like they predicted it was going to happen, but they added it in there to add, some cultural context to the world and accuracy, which is really interesting and effective as hell. I would love to start talking about the characters.
Let's start with Theo.
Yeah.
Now, fun fact about Theo real quick before we get too in-depth on him. Did you notice that animals love him?
Yeah, and I think that it's a sign that he's got great character because the dogs love him, so doesn't the little kitten that runs up his leg.
All the dogs love him, and the kitten climb up his leg. Cuarón does not do things by accident. He's a very controlled director, so these are things that he's putting into the film on purpose. I know, there will be people on TikTok who'll be like, "Oh, whatever, it's just a dog. Like it doesn't mean anything." English teacher. It's all by design.
Dogs are a great judge of character. That's a common phrase. And
it ties to him being a trustworthy person, which is also key. Trusts him because Julian told her to trust him if anything gets spooky.
Yeah, he's a great guy deep down. He was once a great man. He was a former political activist that was working with Julian. And now, after the loss of his son and the loss of hope for humanity, he has just gone full-blown apathetic to the world. He is ironically working as a government bureaucrat, basically the exact antithesis of what he believed in when he was young in his youth, in fighting the government. He's an alcoholic. Like I said, he's got a drink in his hand at almost every moment in the first act of this film. Like you said, animals like him. And he goes through massive transformation in this film to become the kind of person he was in his youth, where he is full of hope as soon as he sees Key's pregnant belly. All he wants is money. Even Julian's like, all you're here for is the money. That's all you want. Yeah. Really? And then he's like, where you got my money? See, that's all you care about is the money. All he cares about is himself until Key reveals the pregnancy to him in that barn. Then he gets hope again, and he risks his life and eventually gives his life to protect and save Key and bring her to refuge.
Yeah, and we do get some exposition in this film, especially in the first act, but it's very minimal and subtle. Julian explains, she tells us this funny story of how when they were younger, Theo drugged a group of officers with ketamine as a joke. And so they were very politically active, and there's even a photo of them holding Dylan at a protest. And the death of their son Dylan is definitely the main catalyst for their separation. And you can see that Julian took the complete opposite path of Theo and became more of an extremist and absolute a leader within the organization of the Fishes. Whereas Theo, like you said, became apathetic and actually became, part of the machine of bureaucracy and kind of just went in the opposite direction. And it makes you wonder what would have happened if Dylan had survived. And I like the contrast of the characters because they were on the same path and had the same direction in life when they were younger, but then the tragedy caused the rift, and they went in completely opposite directions, informed by the world. And it's also a depiction of how people can deal with trauma and deal with loss and grief, whereas Theo just shut down. And you could say Julian had motivation to to work harder at what she was doing and to become more of an extremist in a way.
Yeah, and she's in charge of the fishes until her death, when she was basically betrayed by the other fishes who are now, Luke and the other fishes who are going to use Key's baby as basically a weapon against the government and to start an uprising where at first Julian and the fishes were trying other non-violent means as best they could, where there are violent protests that they've done in the past, but the government's also spreading misinformation.
They bombed something in Liverpool. They hinted at.
Now, the fishes are different than the Human Project. The Human Project, you could say, something like The Last of Us took a lot of inspiration probably from this movie and this story.
Yeah.
A lot of these secret organizations, as well as the government tyrannical control over citizens. And the Human Project are probably, you could say, argue sort of like the Fireflies, where they're a secret organization, even more secret than the fishes. And the Human Project is trying to find a cure to infertility. Now, the fishes and Julian, they're trying to get Key to the Human Project. And the thing with the Human Project is it's such a secret society, and they can't reveal where they are, who they are to anybody, that they talk and communicate with people and the fishes through mirrors. This is how Luke is not able to track them later in the film to find out that they're going to that boat, is because Julian was in charge of the situation, talking through mirrors. So you talk to somebody, they talk to somebody else, and that person they talk to talks to the Human Project, and then vice versa. The Human Project talks to somebody, they talk to somebody else, and they talk to you, basically. So working through mirrors so that the identity of the Human Project is still anonymous and hidden.
And there's a great little production design Easter egg where they take Theo in the van and they cover him with the mask. And then they take the mask off, and he's in that windowed room covered with newspaper clippings, So the production team actually made all those newspaper articles and pages by hand, and they all are actually real stories that you can read. And also, there's an article above Clive Owen's head that says Moore, Moore, for a person's name. And then Julian is sitting in front of him, so it's a little Easter egg the production team put in there.
Great little Easter egg.
Love it.
Jasper, again, great character from Michael Caine. So fun. He adds that brevity that's really needed in this movie, lightheadedness and just lighthearted. His strawberry cough marijuana, which is so strong and makes you taste strawberries when you cough. It's just a blast. He's always like, what do you taste? What do you taste? Cough now, cough. It's so funny.
Strawberries.
Such a positive person.
Delightful.
Just loves his wife so much. And yeah, the pull my finger jokes, he's got that hippie mentality, the John Lennon aloofness, which is so fun and exciting. And so I think he's a really important character to this movie. And Michael Caine was still killing it at this time. This is 2006, and he's Alfred and this at the same time, basically.
One of the best actors of all time, and he really is a wonderful performer. And you can really see in this film, I think that maybe younger people are unaware of how big he was, obviously, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but also how talented he is. Many Oscar nominations.
And a win. He was filming Jaws.
He's 2 wins.
Two wins.
Couldn't
accept it.
2 wins. The Woody Allen film, what is it called? Hannah and Her Sisters. And then he also won for something I can't remember. But Jasper is a really terrific character, and he's someone who perfectly embodies the idea of hope and trying to make a difference. And in a way, he's still trying to live a life, unlike Theo, who's just basically cut himself off from feeling anything at all. And it is a very tragic outcome for Jasper, who dies horribly, and whose wife was tortured by the government, and like I said, has been in a catatonic state for a very long time. And he ends up killing her with quietus, so that she doesn't have to suffer the hands of the fishes. But I love Jasper, and he's always a breath of fresh air whenever I watch this film. But this is probably the first film I saw where I was like, Michael Caine is an unbelievable actor, I would say.
I think you said catatonic steak
I did say catatonic steak. I absolutely 100% did. So,
And going back to him being a political cartoonist or former cartoonist, so like you said earlier, the production in the location, I mean, the scenery, you can see his cartoons from his past in his work. And I love the de-aged photos of him with the long hair, just like the big grin. And the cartoons that were in the film were actually drawn by Steve Bell, an award-winning political cartoonist for the Guardian newspaper.
And like I said, he based his character on John Lennon. He actually was friendly with John Lennon, and so he was able to take that away to kind of inject that personality he saw in real life into this character. And Cuarón explained that Michael Caine's not a method actor, but he said once Michael had the clothes on and he stepped in front of the mirror to look at himself, his body language immediately started to change. Michael loved it, and he believed he was this guy. But he's great, like just the way he plays the stoner, like leaning on the edge of the couch, and just like he's always like in a relaxed state, and he's kind of like all over the place physically, and his hand gestures, he captured it perfectly. It's like it's as good as as good as Franco did in Pineapple Express playing a stoner. You know what I mean? That physicality, the embodying. It's not just like, yeah, I'm high, bro, but like the physicality of a person like that, he captured perfectly.
Also, Miriam is a character who you're kind of unsure of for a little bit because she does work for the Fishes with Julian, but then obviously after Theo discovers the plot against Julian by Luke and Miriam joins them on their journey, you realize that all she cares about is Key and Key's baby and protecting Key, and she eventually sacrifices herself to save Key later in the film on that refugee bus. And before then, we learn backstory about who she is and who she was at that school sequence when they're waiting for Sid to show up, the police officer who's going to smuggle them into the refugee camp. And Miriam is telling that story about who she was in her past when she used to be a midwife and she helped deliver babies for a living. And she was at basically ground zero of where all these nurses all around the world that she was communicating with every day, every week, more babies were being lost to miscarriages until eventually only a couple babies a week, then a couple babies a month, and then eventually no babies were being born at all. So she was ground zero in a hospital of seeing this firsthand, the many miscarriages, the failed pregnancies, and the loss of births.
I would say she's one of the most tragic parts of the film, Miriam's ultimate conclusion of her story, because she gets taken off the bus because Key is in pain and the officer suspects Key of doing something. And then Miriam, like you said, sacrifices herself by standing up and praying right in the guy's face, enticing him to take her off the bus instead of Key. And then she's put in this lineup of a few other immigrants, and as the bus starts rolling onward, we see the different stages that these poor people are going through, where first they're being threatened and lined up, then they're being stripped, and then they're being executed, and then we end up seeing just the covered bodies of the corpses. And you can only assume that's about to happen to Miriam, which is so tragic. But then also, the entire journey into the refugee camp is one of the most horrific sequences I've ever seen in a movie. And something that I like to compare it to is the journey for 12 Years a Slave for Solomon, his journey from being captured, when he's being captured and he's held prisoner in the southern Maryland, if I'm correct, and then he's transported into the slave auction. Like that journey, it's like a 5-minute journey that's just terrifying and horrifying. And this sequence reminds me of that. They have a lot in common, and the music's terrifying, but you see these horrible circumstances in the cages and the walls of fences that these poor immigrants and these unfortunate people have to work through and bob and weave their way through, and they're treated like absolute scum and like animals by the officers and the government officials. And then if they're lucky enough to get through that journey, they make it into the refugee camp, which just seems like hell on earth, and it's like its own little Wild West, and it seems like a hellish place to even spend a night, but many people live there. Like that's where their home is now. And Cuarón was very specific about the design of this place, of the refugee camp. I'm pulling it up 1 second. Bear with me.
Well, I can keep going on.
Yeah.
It's kind of a modern-day concentration camp, the transportation, the travel to the refugee camp. And it harkens to something like Schindler's List, and to see what these people go through and persecuted just because of who they are, where they were born, where they're from, or religious rights. And now, like I said, immigration and illegal immigration is one of the main themes of this film, and what they have to go through when they're sent to these camps, and just when they are there, they're basically doomed to death.
And so for the production design, Cuarón kept saying to his crew, and it was about making the place look run down and to portray poverty. He also made use of London's most popular sites, shooting in locations like Trafalgar Square and Battersea Power Station. The power station scene, whose conversion into an art archive is a reference to the Tate Modern, has been compared to Antonioni's Red Desert, the Italian filmmaker. It's a terrific film, Red Desert, if you haven't seen it. Cuarón added the pig balloon, obviously, as a homage to Pink Floyd's Flying Animals. And the refugee camp is one of these instances where they wanted to make it feel as run down and inhumane in a place struck with absolute poverty. But also what's interesting is it's a neighborhood, and there are people
It's a city.
It's a city, and people live there and still do. And what's the woman's name? Monica?
Something, yeah.
She brings Theo and Key to an apartment where an elderly couple lives, but they seem to be like they've lived there all their lives.
Polish family.
Yeah, the Polish family, and they're feeding the baby orange slices and
No, they're feeding Key orange slices.
feeding Key.
It's a day-old baby.
Yeah, it's the run.
Can't be eating
It's the run.
tangerines.
Yeah. Sorry. Feeding Key orange slices, but playing with the baby. But if you look around the home, it looks they've had that home for many, many decades, you can tell. And so they just took a part of the city, kind of like a Jewish ghetto in Poland or a Jewish ghetto in Germany, basically walling it off and being like, that's where we're sending everybody. And that's an example of that, because people lived there until everybody was put there.
And Cuarón, this is, referencing Mexican poverty. Y Tu Mama Tambien and Roma are two films that heavily explore the themes of wealth disparity in Mexico, but not just Mexico, but in any Western civilization, really, in any major developed country. And I think that's definitely a great reference. But yeah, those two movies explore that with the characters as well as the locations and the sequences they get into. I mean, Y Tu Mama Tambien, the two main characters, one's upper class, one's lower class. Same thing with Roma. The main character is the servant of an upper class family in Mexico, and we see the two different lifestyles and lives and worlds they come from. So that's a great reference for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the production design is remarkable, and it's not just that stuff, but also the futurist production design, especially in London. You see, what looks like it could be a possible future for a metropolis environment, in terms of billboards, in terms of transportation, advertisements, how we intake the media. And I think that it seems like it's very likely possibilities for these kinds of areas.
And of course, Key, the central character in the film in terms of the saving of humanity, the first woman to give birth to a baby in 18 years. She's very young. She's probably about 17, 18 years old, the character. That's what they assume. Jasper says that Dylan would be about your age by now. And if Dylan died back in, 2008, they said. So they'd probably be around the same age, about 18, 20 years old. She doesn't know who the father of the baby is. And she's got so much heart and spunk and wit. And she's so energetic and fiery, and you love it so much. And I love how there's this kind of ongoing joke of what to name the baby. First it's Frawley, and then it's Bazooka, and then she eventually decides to name the child Dylan, which can be a girl's name as well, naming the baby after Theo and Julian's child. Now, the complexity of the situation with Key is she's a Fuji, and you would think that the first birth in the first pregnancy in 18 years would be lifted up in the world and should be made public. Theo says we should make it public, but the fishes make Theo realize you can't tell the government that this government won't accept that the first pregnancy and the first birth is from a Fuji woman. They would hide it probably. The government would go to the length of probably kill the baby.
No. they wouldn't kill the baby. They would take the baby and make it seem like a upper class couple
Gotcha,
had
yeah.
the baby.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, they wouldn't kill it.
I mean, they would hide the fact. There's potential they would hide the fact that the baby was even born.
Possibly, but they.
They prop up
one of them says
that an elite woman is the one that gave birth.
Exactly. They would change who the parents were publicly.
So the fact that the government would be unable to accept that a Fuji woman who they declassified as like a full human now is the first pregnancy and the first pregnant woman in 18 years.
And like you said earlier, Julianne Moore's character, Julian, was originally the first pregnancy, and that's how it is in the book. But they actually wrote the character of Key, Quaron, and his writing team, because he has an interest in the recent single origin hypothesis of human origins and the status of dispossessed people. So the single origin hypothesis is the idea that all human beings came from Africa, and then depending on where they migrated to, different regions of the world, that changed in terms of evolution, in terms of pigmentation of skin, types of hair, eye color, all sorts of things. And that was the change in humanity physically was based upon geographical regional locations, how much sunlight people were exposed to, cold weather, hot weather. So that changed the way we looked. But everyone came from Africa. And that's why the film cast a black actress in Claire Hope Ashity in order to portray this idea they had for a new reinvention of the character. And Quaron said the fact that this child will be the child of an African woman has to do with the fact that humanity started in Africa. We're putting the future of humanity in the hands of the dispossessed and creating a new humanity to spring out of that, which I think is a great addition and change to the story.
And this movie turns into a really terrific ticking clock. And it's kind of ironic because humanity's on a ticking clock, a slow ticking clock, but at some point that hourglass and all the sand's going to be gone. But this movie turns into like a 20-hour ticking clock for Key, Theo, and Miriam, eventually just Key and Theo, getting to that boat inside the refugee camp. But there are multiple ticking clocks because not only do they have to meet the Human Project at sunset the next day, and they will not wait for them. They might come back, but the next day they'll be gone. So they have to reach this boat.
Because they have to maintain anonymity.
Yeah, exactly.
Anonymity.
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 I hate that word.
Anonymity. Anonymity.
I have a belly button.
But they also have the ticking clock of Key is 8 months pregnant. And then what starts to happen when they're on the bus after Sid is going to sneak them into the refugee camp, she starts having contractions, and she's not supposed to have them this early into her pregnancy. She should be waiting another month. And then
it's being brought on by the stress.
Yes, and then on the bus, when they're entering the Bexhill refugee camp, her water breaks, and she's about to give birth. Then Theo has to give birth to Key in the refugee camp once they somehow get in there safely.
You worded that funny.
Theo
has to give birth to Key.
Has to help birth the baby with Key, act as the midwife, you could say, in the refugee camp. But so there's two ticking clocks. They have to get there in time, but also they have to healthily and successfully give birth to the baby without getting caught in a refugee camp where conditions, the worst conditions you could possibly imagine to give birth to a child, are inside this disgusting, unsanitary refugee camp. And the cleanest thing that they can give birth to the baby is using Theo's jacket as well as cleaning his hands with whiskey.
There's so many elements of suspense in the last 40 minutes of the film. And Sid, the character, is a main cause for so much conflict because first, he grows a little suspicious when he first is dropping them off, but then he lets them go. Sad Fuji phase. That's good. That's good. But then also, once he sees them on the news, he goes back into the refugee camp to capture them because he can get a pretty penny for them. And then he discovers the baby, and you're like, oh my God, this guy can't know what's gonna happen. And he nearly succeeds in taking them away, but they manage to overpower him and knock him out. Another invisible thing of CGI I wanted to mention earlier when we were talking about the visual effects in CGI is when the door is cracked and Sid is trying to break through and he sticks his head out the door, you know what I mean? And then Theo grabs like this metal, I don't know, it looks like a car battery or something, and he picks it up and he bashes it into Sid's face. That was all CGI, the entire object that Clive Owen picks up. And you can tell it's the way he's holding it, it's not quite 100%. And then when he drops it, the way it falls and hits the ground, it just doesn't look quite right. But I've seen this movie 10 times. I didn't notice it until like the 12th time, and I was like, oh, that's CGI. So it's another brilliant instance of invisible CGI that actors are interacting with.
In the reveal of the pregnancy and the baby, it causes characters to react different ways. Obviously, Luke is a character who takes control of the fishes after he plans the attack on their car and kills Julian because he wants to use the baby as a beacon of a weapon for the rebellion, the uprising of the fishes against the government of Britain. And then obviously Sid, once he finds out about the baby after finding out about them on the news, he's of course shocked by the sight of the baby, but he's going to still turn them in and still threatens to shoot them because he's trying to get the bounty basically for whoever pays the highest between the fishes and the government. And also we have the woman, the gypsy woman who helps them. All she wants to do is protect them. And she tries to warn them about Sid. You can't go with Sid, basically. They don't understand her language, but she's clearly saying, don't go with him. He's a bad man. And then even when Key gives her the baby when they're trying to escape through that door that won't fully open, they slide through. She's like, my baby, my baby. You think, oh, she took the baby. But no, she's right there with the baby. She wants to help them. So she's a good person trying to help them and sees the hope in them and helps them get to the boat and lets them get away in the boat and sacrifices herself, basically.
And the other ticking clock is the bombing of the city.
Yes.
The city's about to be bombed, which Sid reveals. Yeah. So that's another ticking clock that they throw in. And, I mean, the next 15 minutes of the film was just heart-stopping, propulsive action. And it's done. I love the... You can always tell when the wonder's going to start because it starts in that tunnel with this high strings, like scary strings. And every time I watch this movie, once the shot starts with that music, I'm always like, oh my God, here we go. Let's fucking go.
It's incredible. It's a back and forth. I mean, they get overpowered by the fishes. The fishes take Key and the baby away. They almost get executed. But obviously, they are kind of rescued by the government and the distraction.
Yeah.
And then the sequence of getting to that apartment complex, which is just housing so many people, it's their home, that is being demolished and just riddled with bullets and tanks, and Theo has to wait for his perfect opportunities to sneak into there, and then getting the baby and Key, and just the crying baby and how it basically parts the sea of a war zone to let them safely pass by, and everyone gets a glimpse at the miracle of this newborn baby, and they get safe passage. But as soon as they get out of the area in the blast radius, you could say, of the war zone, the war zone goes back up.
And also there's a great moment with Luke where he's talking about how the baby's gonna be so useful for them, but he keeps using the pronoun he for the baby. And then Theo says it's a girl. And then Luke goes, a girl. And then he says, I had a sister once. And so you get to see a moment of humanity for Luke. And it's just 5 seconds of the film, but then you think, oh my God, he had a past, he had a family, he had a mother, he had a sister. And so that makes you connect with him and empathize with him in an instant, even though he's been one of the main antagonists of the film. I love that moment.
Yeah, it's tragic because Theo gets hit by a bullet from Luke, but they do make it to the boat, obviously, and they row out there. And it's one of the most beautiful and tragic shots of the film. You know, they're rowing this boat in the middle of the ocean. There's fog everywhere. It's gray. There's no hope. What if they don't show up? And Theo is just so happy and content and confident that everything's going to be okay. And, you know, the beacon of light from the buoy in the ocean is just kind of just a symbol of hope for the humanity going forward. That it's really the brightest light we've seen in the film, you could say. And it's the most vibrant color we've seen in the film besides blood is this glowing red light from the buoy.
Yeah.
And it's a symbol of hope of the future for humanity. And Theo's passing is tragic, but he seems to have passed away happily because he finally did something with his life that he always wanted to do, and that was to do something for the good of humanity.
And the boat's called Tomorrow.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the boat's called Tomorrow.
Of the human project.
It's a representation of hope for tomorrow.
Yeah, it's so tragic. I cry every time that Key tells him that I'm gonna name the baby Dylan.
Yeah,
it's so sad.
I'm getting teary-eyed right now.
Oh my goodness!
Stop talking about it. I have a couple more cool facts that we didn't get in the episode.
Let's do it, man.
So throughout the entire course of the film, Theo never picks up or uses a firearm.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Not once in the film does he. And then also, When Miriam is taken off the bus in the refugee camp, you can hear the song Arbeit Mach Free by the Libertines. Arbeit Mach Free means, and translated into English, work shall set you free, which was written above the entrances of all the Nazi death and concentration camps in World War II. So it's a correlation again to the Holocaust, like you mentioned earlier. At the beginning of the movie, Theo leaves the coffee shop, and in the city of London, we see a tall, pointed building that can be seen in the background. This building is called the Shard. We actually mentioned it in movie news the other week with Joey Locke.
Joey Locke.
But it's it's the tallest building in Western Europe. However, it was not built until 2009 when construction began. So they digitally put it into the film. I believe the buildings take a long time. It's a long process, so I'm sure that it was already approved and the planning was begun. And so that the filmmakers were able to know, like, oh, this building will be up here at this point in the film. So they actually digitally put the Shard in the film. It wasn't even built yet when they actually filmed the movie.
To go back to the sound real quick, I think the music choices of this film are phenomenal. And Cuarón used a combination of rock, pop music, electronic music, hip-hop, classical music for the film, as well as some inventive and chaotic experimental music that Jasper puts on when Theo tells him his ears are ringing. He's like, oh, so you wouldn't mind a little bit of this? And it's like, crazy music. And not just the music,
it's
but
a
also
real style of music.
Yeah, but also the ambience of the film. There's so much great sound design, whether we're at the farmhouse, the first hideout house where we have the dogs in the background, the roosters, the chickens, but also even in the city, just the sound of so many cars and foot traffic and just the sounds of a city just creating this incredible ambience that, sure, some of it they picked up there, but a lot of it's just added in post-production. So there's great ambient sound design wherever they are.
Also, a dog is present in almost every shot of the movie.
Holy crap, you're right.
Many, many shots of the movie, there's a dog present at one point in the frame.
That's a good point, man. That's a good point.
There's so many things hidden in the frame that makes this, which is one of the reasons why I think this movie is so endlessly rewatchable. It's a movie that I've seen many, many times since it came out.
Another Christian reference, the title of the film it comes from Psalm 90, so Children of Men. And Psalm 90 says, Lord, thou hast been our dwelling place in all generations. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever, thou hadst formed the earth and the world, even from everlasting to everlasting. Thou art God. Thou turnest man to destruction, and sayest, Return, ye children of men. For 1,000 years in thy sight are but a yesterday, when it is a past, and as a watch in the night. And men refers to just humanity. It's not just like a gender term, just men. It does. I think a lot of people, they'll look at the surface of the title, especially, and they think that's just
the
like,
Bible.
It's just humanity, men in general.
And like I said, the book it's much more heavily spiritual and religious, especially in terms of Christianity, in terms of its themes and actual structures of the plot. So there were actually some critics of the film when it came out. Some fans of the book said that it was actually, they didn't like the new interpretation and basically taking all aspects of religion out of the story. But I think it works better this way.
Well, in the stand on religion, do you think that Theo potentially represents a Christ-like figure? I think specifically the suffering, but also I think the purposeful actions in detail of him having no shoes for a good portion of the film and going through the pain of his feet. Maybe it's a reference to Jesus carrying the crucifix, something like that, enduring pain.
Well, you could also correlate it to Dante's Inferno and the just traveling through different stages of suffering as well. I would say I don't view him as a representation of a Christ-like figure, but I think he's a representation of hope and the good within humanity.
But he does die for humanity.
He does, yeah. He does absolutely
sacrifice himself.
Yeah, he does absolutely. But I don't look at it that way. But I think that, like I said earlier, with Cuarón put references to religion, but nothing very tangible or specific. It's more of like kind of like a loose connection to aspects of religion, like not having her be a virgin, but making a joke about being a virgin who's pregnant. You know what I mean? So I think that it's not exactly like he represents a Christ-like figure, but represents like a kind of a version of one, maybe I would say.
So kind of.
Yeah, it's kind
So
of.
basically, you just said yes.
I said yeah.
So he doesn't represent Christ, but in a way he does.
There's a long-winded yes.
Yes.
I just don't want to agree with you.
Rewind. Yes, he does represent a Christ-like figure. But I mean, Children of Men, there's still so much to talk about. I mean, I want to watch it again, like even after watching it last night. It's just that incredible of a movie. And I hope if you haven't seen it in a while, you revisit it, or you hopefully revisited it recently before watching and listening to the episode. Or maybe if it was your first time watch, I hope you really appreciated how incredible this film is.
And I know a lot of you really love the film because a lot of people have DM'd us about it. But I'm just shocked at its kind of average rating. It does have a 4.2 on Letterboxd, which is great. But the 7.9 on IMDb, I find so surprising.
Anything near an 8 is still really good.
I know,
but I'm
but, like,
surprised
this
it's not
is-
at least an 8. Yeah.
Like, this is like we talk about how, like, this is what we think Children of Men we consider is one of the few masterpieces of the 21st century. Like, this is definitely one of them. And it's also a film that, like, was so overlooked in terms of any of the awards spotlight. I mean,
He didn't even get a nomination for Best Director.
Oh yeah, to not win Best Director, and also, I mean, just all of every award it should have been nominated for, and I think this should have won Best Picture. I think what won that year?
Let me check.
It better not have been Crash. 2006. What the hell won?
Let's see.
No, Crash was 05, I think.
So the movie came out in 2006, so it would have been the 2007 Oscars, right?
Yes.
And again, it only got nominated for 3 and lost all 3. So let's see, 2007 Oscar winners. Oscar.
The Departed. The Departed.
Ooh, that's tough to compete
But
with.
it didn't even get nominated though.
So Marty won Best Picture and won Best Director that year. All right, I mean, it's Marty.
That was a good year. The Little Miss Sunshine, The Lives of Others, Marie Antoinette. Forrest Whitaker won for the Last King of Scotland.
Oh, it's an awesome movie.
Yeah, this is.
I think about that movie every time I have in Painful Gas. The Last King of Scotland. If you've seen the movie, you get it. If you have a stomach ache and you just got to get it out.
But also, I mean, in terms of other directors, so Iñárritu was nominated for Babel. Clint Eastwood for Letters from Iwo Jima, Stephen Frears for The Queen, and United 93 for Paul Greengrass. So it was a very competitive year of directing. However, I do think that this was the best the best film that came out in 2006. And I honestly love The Departed and I love Babel, but this is Children of Men is on, I think, a different level.
You're on a different level, man.
You are.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into our episode on Alfonso Cuarón's Children of Men. Again, don't forget to become a patron today at patreon.com/Raiders of the Lost Podcast. It's the very best way to support our show. Please leave us those 5-star reviews as well on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts, you can also leave a written review. We love to read those out on the show during the intermissions we do every time. And subscribe on YouTube if you're watching. Thanks so much.
See you next time.
This episode was executive produced by our chosen one patrons, Cody Moen, Andrew Hagan, Becca Keene, Benjamin Cook, Calvin Murphy Griggs, Nicholas Martin, Darian Singleton, Tyler McFly, Andrew Hagan. Our chosen one patrons are our biggest supporters. Thank you so much. Raiders of the Lost Podcast is a mirror image production. Sound mixing done by Jacob Kossler. Opening music by Chase Jackson.